Ever bought a guitar that looked amazing in the photos but sounded like a cheap practice model when you finally plug it in? That's the nightmare that haunts a lot of us when we scroll through endless listings of vintage-style electrics. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent a few weeks playing the Gretsch G6136T 59GE, the Falcon in vintage white with a Bigsby, and I want to walk you through why it either lands you in the sweet spot of that classic Gretsch vibe or leaves you feeling like you missed the mark. First, let's talk about the category itself. Hollowbody electrics are a bit of a love-hate relationship for many players. On the one hand, they give you that warm, resonant tone you hear on classic rockabilly, surf, and early jazz recordings. On the other hand, the same airy construction can make them prone to feedback when you crank up the amp in a live setting. So the big question when you're hunting for a new Hollowbody is, do you need that vintage character for clean tone work, or are you chasing a more versatile tool that can handle a bit of gain without screaming? The Gretsch G6136T 59GE positions itself right in the middle of that debate. The first thing you notice when you unbox it is the striking vintage white finish. It's not just a paint job, the color actually reflects Gretsch's 1950s aesthetic, complete with a silver sparkle that catches the stage light. That visual cue is part of the appeal for gigging players who want a guitar that stands out before they even start playing. The Bigsby tailpiece is also a giveaway that this is meant for those smooth, tremolo-laden passages you hear on surf classics. Now, the practical side. I tried the Falcon in 3 distinct scenarios: a backyard jam session with a clean amp, a small club gig where I pushed a little overdrive, and a studio overdub where I was looking for that articulate, airy chord voicing. In the clean setting, the 2 Gretsch humbuckers delivered the lush, buttery tone you expect from a Hollowbody. The mid-range was warm but never muddy, and the high end had a nice shimmer that made chords sing without getting harsh. What surprised me was how the Bigsby behaved. When I engaged a subtle vibrato on a single note, the pitch modulation felt smooth and musical, not the wobble you sometimes get on cheaper tremolo systems. When I turned the gain up a notch for the club gig, the Hollowbody's natural resonance started to flirt with feedback at around 70 dB. That's not a flaw, it's an inherent trait of Hollowbody design, but it does mean you need to be a bit more mindful of mic placement or use a noise gate if you're playing in a louder environment. In my case, dialing the amp's master volume down and using a modest amount of distortion kept the tone tight, and the guitar still cut through the mix thanks to the humbucker's higher output compared to typical single coils. The Bigsby, however, became a little finicky under heavy distortion. The tremolo arm tended to loosen a fraction, which meant you had to tighten the spring tension a bit before the show. That's a small trade-off for the vintage aesthetic, but it's worth noting if you plan to rely on the Bigsby for aggressive pitch bends on stage. In the studio, the Falcon shone the most. The Ebony Fingerboard gave the notes a crisp attack, and the maple neck felt stable under the string tension. I recorded clean arpeggios and found that the instrument's natural sustain held the notes just long enough to add a sense of depth without muddying the mix. The Hollowbody also contributed a subtle air that made the tracks feel less sterile compared to a solid body guitar recorded with the same mic setup. If you're a singer-songwriter looking for a guitar that adds character to a stripped-down acoustic-like arrangement, this model can be a surprisingly good fit. Who should consider buying this Gretsch? If you're a guitarist who loves the vintage look, enjoys clean or lightly overdriven tones, and values a guitar that can do both studio work and modest live gigs without needing a massive PA system, the Falcon is a solid match. It's especially appealing to players who want a Bigsby for that classic surf rock vibe or for subtle pitch modulation on ballads. The instrument also makes sense for collectors who appreciate a faithful recreation of a 59 style model but don't want to break the bank on a truly historic piece. Who might want to skip it? If you're a heavy metal player or someone who regularly plays large venues where you need to crank the amp past the point where a Hollowbody becomes an unmanageable feedback source, this isn't the best choice. Likewise, if you're looking for a guitar that stays perfectly in tune while using the Bigsby for wild dive bombs, you might find the tremolo stability under extreme use a bit limiting. Players who demand a fully sealed, low-maintenance neck with no need for occasional adjustments may also prefer a solid body or semi-hollow design with a fixed bridge. Let's